Hello, everybody. It's time for another episode of the Get to Know Her show. I am your host, Monica Graves. I'm very, very excited to have you here today. What a gorgeous day. It finally feels like spring. The weekend was amazing. I hope you guys remembered your sunscreen. I'm starting to show my arms now, which I'm so happy about. But I'm telling you, you guys, I can't believe the difference in the way that I feel from the weather, which I'm sure all of you are feeling as well. It's just like this rejuvenation, feeling youthful and good again. Like the winter, my God. I mean, I tried to do my morning workouts, but it's hard. It's so much better when we can get outside in the fresh air and not be freezing cold all the time. So I hope you guys are enjoying it. So I'm showing off my arms today because I've got this fabulous top from Brenda Bedome, which is a gorgeous peach color. I love it, love it, love it. And look at that detail at the front, the little crisscross. It's nice and roomy. The fabric is soft and lovely. And I'd love for you to go and check out brendabedome.com. Use the coupon code Get to Know Her, and you'll get 21% off of your order, which is fantastic. So make sure you get yourself some good summer clothes, start showing off those arms, and just indulge. Why not? So I've got my piece of paper here because I have a big introduction to make. Today, I am speaking with an amazing woman. Not only is she a palliative physician, she is also an author. And there's just so much. Like I was saying to Marissa in the sound check, I feel like I could talk to her all afternoon. But my guest's name is Marissa Slaven. She was born and raised in Montreal by parents who taught her that it was her responsibility to do her part to make the world a better place. She has been helping in her role as a palliative care physician for 25 years, and she continues to do that, and she gets great satisfaction from that work. So I'm excited to talk to her about that as well. She is the mother of 3 grown children and 2 dogs. The dogs might actually chime in on the interview. We're not sure, but that could be fun. She always enjoys reading books of multiple genres and frequently has 2 or 3 books on the go at the same time. I know a lot of you guys are like that. She especially loves stories with strong female characters and was searching for a young adult novel where the heroine saves the world using her intelligence and compassion. She was inspired by her daughter to write Code Blue, an eco-fiction thriller where a teenage girl and her friends battle climate change. Marissa took courses at Humber College where she honed in on her writing skills. In the process of writing the novel, Marissa taught herself about the climate crisis. She became a passionate climate activist and continues to both write and try to do her part to make the world a more sustainable place for all living things. This is amazing. Marissa loves interacting with her readers and speaking with young people about the environment. She recently completed Code Red, the sequel to Code Blue, and is working on a nonfiction account of her great uncle's involvement in the Spanish Civil War. Oh my gosh. Are you guys excited as I am? This is amazing. There she is, Marissa. Oh my gosh, I love reading your intro. You're just like so fascinating.
Oh, thank you.
And I have to say, I'm a little bit nervous now about our interview because before while I was waiting till 1 o'clock, I decided I was going to check out your podcast where you and your daughter are talking about the book. And it's so fantastic. She asks you really great questions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's quite amazing, Anna.
She is. Yeah. She's a media student and she's very busy at university, but she's so much fun. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So I guess that podcast, she was 16 at that time when you guys recorded that.
Yeah, correct.
About your first book. Oh, that's so great. Yeah. I love it. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I'm so happy to have you here. And I want to ask you the question I ask all my guests. The first question is, what did little Marissa want to be when she grew up?
So I think when I was little, I sort of didn't really envision having a job. I envisioned having a horse and a dog and riding off into the wilderness and just surviving in the wilderness with my horse and my dog.
That sounds amazing.
Not really a job, but that was where my imagination took me. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. And did you grow up on a farm, or were you exposed to horses?
I grew up in the suburbs, although at the time there was a lot of undeveloped land around us. And I had so many fond memories of sort of going for nature walks with my mother. So.
Oh, that's great. Wow. Well, I like that. I think you could have made that some kind of career choice. Being on the farm with your horses and your dogs.
Definitely. Yeah. There's still time. Maybe I'll do that when I grow up.
Yeah, exactly. You had some foresight. Yeah. So Marissa, you're still a practicing palliative physician?
Yeah, I work
and you've been Wow. And you've been doing that for 25 years? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So what sort of led you into that type of work? I know you said your parents were very encouraging of you making a difference in the world and helping others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think growing up, we did have a fair number of doctors in our family. So I sort of had an idea of what doctors did. And when I was about 16 years old, I thought about all the different jobs that I could realistically sort of have. And I thought, you know what, no matter what job you have, there's going to be bad days. Like it's just natural. Right. And so I thought, well, if I was a doctor, even if I was having a bad day at my job, I would still feel like, well, but I'm helping somebody. So it's worthwhile. So that was sort of my initial thinking. And I have to say, yeah, I did good. 16-year-old Marissa could And then within medicine, I think, in medical school, you get to try a bunch of different specialties. And I sort of fell in love with oncology, which is cancer medicine, because to me it was really fascinating that it's all different parts of your body. It's not just the heart or just the kidneys. And I thought, oh, I don't think I could do just the kidneys for 30 years or so.
Right.
I liked that it was in all different areas. And then once I was doing oncology, what I found was palliative care was really an emerging field at that time. And the really interesting thing about palliative care that spoke to me was it's not just about all the different parts of your body, but it's about all the different parts of being a person. So we talk about a biopsychosocial model. Like, yes, there's the physical part, but in palliative care, we also want to take care of the emotional part of your social well-being and what's your family going through, what's your spirituality, and how does that influence it? So not that the doctor does all that, you do it as part of a team, but I just loved that very holistic approach to care.
Wow, that's incredible. My dad passed away in 2012. He had cancer and he was diagnosed in September and he passed away the following November. So it was very fast. Yeah. And that was our family's first exposure to a palliative team, and he died at the old Oakville Trafalgar Hospital. I don't know if you know, where do you live, Marissa? Are you
in Hamilton?
You're in Hamilton, so you know that hospital. Yeah. And it was really amazing, the doctor who was there to support us. I mean, I think the hardest part about losing a loved one is, first of all, you're totally in denial. You can't imagine that this person's going to be gone. And you do need that support. You need those gentle words to tell you what's really going on. Yeah. Like we had all these, it was so strange. We had all these experiences where doctors were telling us what was happening, but nobody was really telling us what was going to happen inevitably. And it wasn't until a palliative physician came into the room and said, listen, we need to sit down, the whole family. And this is the time frame you're looking at, and your dad is going to pass away. And it was so hard to hear, but at the same time, you're just more prepared, I think. So do you, I guess you do a lot of that type of, have those discussions and, Yeah. And there were even things he was telling, I mean, he was showing me things like, your father's earlobes are dropping. Like that's a sign that he's getting closer. It could be a couple of days now, and I did find it fascinating. I didn't want my dad to die, obviously, but it was really supportive to have somebody there to talk through all this stuff, right?
Yeah, no,
And
absolutely. I mean, I do that all the time, have those conversations almost every day at work. And I think
wow.
to me, the difference is like before I went into palliative care, you'd see people who were dying and their family was around them, not knowing what was happening because nobody told them what was happening. And it's, you know what? If you can share that with people, there's a chance to make a horrible experience better for everybody involved. And a lot of doctors don't feel comfortable having those discussions.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those of us who do need to have them.
Yeah, definitely. So, just like as far as palliative physicians go, is it sort of like how many of how many of you are out there for people? Is there always one in each hospital to support the palliative
Yeah,
department, or how does that work?
yeah. I mean, it's getting better all the time. When I started
Mhm.
doing it, there were very few, and now for sure all hospitals have them, and most cancer centers have them. They haven't spread out as much to other specialties, which, if you think like the number one thing people die from is actually a heart disease, cancer would be number two. Like there
Mhm.
needs to be more inroads in that. In Canada, I think about 1 in every 10 people who have an anticipated death have access to palliative care teams. Sometimes you don't need a specialist. Some doctors can be very good at doing palliative care, especially some family doctors who are really interested in it can do an excellent job. So it doesn't always have to be a specialist.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, we're lucky to have you because we all need that. I mean, you don't want to nobody wants to hear they're going to lose a loved one, but my experience was incredible and
And
yeah.
I don't know if you had this experience at all, Monica, but I know for many of my patients, for most of them, the palliative care doctor is important, but actually the most important part of the team is the nurse. So,
Yeah.
right? The doctor squeezes in, does their thing. The nurse is the one who's there doing
Yeah.
the work. And I mean, that's actually how I learned to do palliative care was from nurses, because at the time when I started doing it, there wasn't even any training programs. So I really need to shout out to our most important colleagues, the nurses, social workers,
Oh.
chaplains as well, but the nurses bear the brunt of the workload and take care of patients and families amazing.
Oh my God. Okay, I'm gonna cry, but I have to. So when my dad was he was in and out of the Oakville Trafalgar Hospital, like going from Jervinsky to Oakville Trafalgar. Anyways, so when he left, he was at Oakville Trafalgar. He had this lovely nurse, and he was talking to her about whatever, and she said that she was going home to Jamaica to visit family, and he said, "Oh, that sounds really nice." And then he went to Jervinsky. He came back. And about a week went by, and then he had that nurse again. And he said to her, "How was your trip to Jamaica? How was your family?" He remembered, and she was so happy.
Yeah.
And so she ended up being with us right till the end. And the day that he died, I still remember, the breathing was changing. We knew something was happening, but you're still in this sort of denial, even though
Yeah.
And she came in and she combed his hair and she straightened out his shirt and she just like did these few little things because she knew.
Yeah.
And she said a little something to him and left the room, and then he passed that night. But it was really like my heart, I totally know what you mean, like so much love there. And it just reaffirmed to us that when we weren't there with him,
Right.
she was there taking really good care of him, as well as the other nurses. I mean, they're amazing
They are.
people. So wow, I'm so happy for that you learned from them and that you're saying that here. Yeah, that's incredible. Wow. So here, I mean, this book, the books now, because another one's coming. This is amazing. So where along the line, like, how did you go from being in this palliative, world and helping people in this very generous way to now wanting to write a book for young adults?
Well, I think the one nice thing about writing that I discovered sort of by accident as I started doing it is, in writing, you can control everything. There's very little else in life where you have control over everything.
Yeah.
Right? And a big part of our lives is learning to come to terms with all the things we can't control, and important in palliative care. But when you're writing, you can control everything that happens. You don't like someone, you can kill them off. You want to change the ending, you can do that. So, so I think I discovered probably about 10, and I've always been a big reader, and so it just came to me sort of as a surprise that I could write, and I started writing. I had an idea for a story, and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. And I was like, oh, I can do this. And not only can I do it, it's like, when people talk about getting in the zone, like that's what happens to me when I'm writing. It's like I sit down to write and I look up and hours have gone by, and I'm like, wow, how did that happen? And I feel so happy when I'm writing. So that's sort of, I discovered that I love to write, and then writing the Code series of books came about because of my daughter, Anna, because she was reading all these amazing books when she was a young teen where girls are the heroes, and like Divergent and Hunger Games are probably some of the more famous ones, but there's lots of others as well. And it's great that the girls are the heroes. And oh my God, when I was growing up, we did not have books like that, or very few anyway. So I was so happy for her, but I felt like something was missing. Like all the books we were reading, the girls were saving the world because they were smart, because they were brave, they could shoot arrows, they could jump off and on trains. But I didn't see any stories where the girls were using their intelligence to save the world. And I thought, I wasn't a very athletic kid myself. I was definitely more of a book nerd. And here's the girl who represented me and who represents my daughter. I mean, my daughter did dance, so she's athletic, but I felt like that was missing. And so I started to think like, okay, if you were a smart girl, what could you save the world from? And I thought, oh, climate change. That sounds like a good thing. I didn't know a thing about climate change at the time. And I didn't want to make stuff up. I thought, it's too important to make stuff up on that account. So medical science is very different than the type of science that's in climate change. But I thought, I need to learn this. And I did everything I could to learn about it, to make sure that the facts around climate change that I put in my books were actual facts and not fiction.
Yeah. That's amazing. Okay, I going back to the podcast with your daughter when you were first releasing Code Blue. I love when I think you asked her about books she had been reading where the female is the hero, and she said, "I don't know, Mom. There's just something off about them. Like they're a little too perfect, and so now I understand what you're saying. It's not, they're not using their intelligence. It's like all of this superpower stuff." Exactly. She said they're not like any other kids I would know. I think she said, That's right. Yeah.
So even in my book, like, I wanted her to be intelligent to solve the problems, but I wanted her to be accessible to the main character, not be like, oh, this is the super smart girl with an IQ of 160 or whatever. It has to be somebody who other girls could see was like themselves, was like somebody that they knew, So she's smart, but a lot of it that she works really hard, and studies really hard, and she really cares a lot about what she's learning, and that's what helps her to face the challenges.
Right. Amazing. So I wanted to ask you too, with writing this book and doing all this research, I mean, you were also talking about, the next decade is, we got to clean some stuff up because, things could look pretty disastrous in 10 years if we just keep going the way we have been. How is that affecting you emotionally, Marissa? Like, with your mental health. I mean, every day we see stuff, like every time I buy meat and that styrofoam packing and that plastic, and and I think too, now with this pandemic, we're all learning so much about climate change because there's all these amazing series on Netflix, and now I'm like, oh, do I really want to eat a piece of salmon? There's so much. There's so much. It feels now like everything we're doing is damaging the environment, and so I just wondered, how are you managing that personally, having all this information?
No, it can feel overwhelming, and it can feel depressing, and it can feel hopeless. But I guess I focus on those feelings, and because I don't think that they're very productive. I think that they're understandable, but they don't necessarily lead to any good outcomes. And so it almost is like palliative care. It's like, okay, something bad is happening. How can I best deal with this situation? Let's take the bad and acknowledge it and say, okay, how do we move forward knowing this, right? So emotionally, for me, I think that I have always come from that sort of same place, whether it's palliative care, whether it's climate change. But I totally understand. I mean, just like you're very sad when somebody's dying, it's very sad that we're killing so many species and making the planet so dangerous for other human beings to live on, right? And so I've been sort of on a journey of like, well, how do I then become proactive in my own life and stay positive on this situation, which is, like you said, it's so serious, and we really do have a very short time. So I think there's many things that I have done and that I continue to do. And I think everybody has potential to do something. And I think even if you feel like you have potential to do something, it's like, okay, this might not solve it, but it's what I can do. It's a better feeling than sitting back and saying it's terrible and I can't do anything, right?
Right. Yeah. So any kind of a little contribution, it's way better. So can you share with us some of the ways that you're applying this in your own life?
Yeah. So, well, one thing is, this journey of self-education about climate change. So that's really an important piece. And that's something that anybody can do by watching videos, by reading books, etc. So you need to educate yourself first and foremost. And then I think getting the message out and talking to other people, and whether it's doing it on YouTube, Facebook live streams, whether it's doing it in the manner of a book or a story or music or art, we all have a way that we feel comfortable bringing the message to others, starting the discussion with others. So that's a really important thing. On a personal level, there's a lot of small things that each of us can do that when you start to add them up, you go, well, if everybody did that, that would be good. That would get us somewhere, right? Because we have to avoid a complete disaster, reduce our carbon footprint by 50% in 10 years. So that means basically 5% a year for each year, right? So if you think, well, what could I do 5% less? Could I drive my car 5% less? Could I fly 5% less? Well, with COVID, we're all flying a lot less, but really we can fly less, Could I eat 5% less meat or 5% more organic vegetables? And sort of like, if each year you say, okay, I did that last year, now I'm going to build on it a little bit more. So, personally, again, I've done a lot of those individual things. I do have an electric car. I've reduced the amount that I was traveling even before COVID. I've reduced my consumption of animal products. I try and, sort of reduce, reuse, recycle, all of those good things. Aside though, and I think all of those things, as I said, are worthwhile, and they all add up and they all build to it. I do think one thing that I'm just coming to knowing in the last year, 6 months, is really this understanding of how much of the climate problem and how much of the climate solution has been sort of put falsely on individuals. Like, it's on you, Marissa, and it's on you, Monica, to do something,
Mm-hmm.
about this, right? Like, well, if you wouldn't keep buying it, we wouldn't keep selling it. And it's really not on you or I. It's on our elected officials to do better on our behalf. This isn't a problem for me or you to solve. It's our problems for our, at every level, local officials. So even your city level, they have tremendous influence on things that have to do with climate change. So right now, I feel like a really important thing to do is to become more politically aware of what's going on in your area. We're lucky enough to live in a democracy. We can protest, we can contact our MPs at all the levels. We certainly can vote and participate in elections. And that's the way things are going to change. I'm sure, Monica, you're aware of Al Gore.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
I often think, what would the world have been like if only?
Oh, I know, me too. If that election had been different, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that he says is it's more important to change laws than to change light bulbs.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's real. I'm sure you've watched, now I can't remember the name of it, the documentary about the ocean and the fishing industry.
Seaspiracy.
Yes, Seaspiracy.
Yeah.
So that was so shocking to me that, I mean, we shouldn't be putting any plastic in the waters, but, people are talking about, like, we've got to stop using plastic straws because of what the impact it has, which, it's terrible, but it only accounts for like 0.5% of what's really happening. And it's all these fishing boats going out there and throwing their plastic nets into the water, the way that they fish, where they just wipe out a whole system, and to me, that's exactly what you're talking about. I'm thinking, like, this isn't regulated. Like,
right, exactly.
This is like a free-for-all. Like, I thought you had to follow a certain protocol to even be able to go out on a big boat and fish,
Yeah.
But
yeah. And and somebody would say to you, well, that's on you as a consumer then, to make sure that you source your fish, and only. And you know what? That's a really white privilege kind of way to go about it, to say, yeah, I have the time and money to source my fish from no, just what you said, Monica. The government needs to step in and regulate industries, because industries are what's destroying the planet, and they're not going to do it themselves. Their goal is to make more money and not to take care of people or the planet. Their goal is to make money for their shareholders. So we need our governments, our institutions, to hold them accountable.
Yeah. That's a big relief hearing that.
Good.
That it is, because I mean, it's so funny too. Backstage, I like to talk big talk. Backstage, we were talking about menopause and cortisol production. And, like, I think about, even at home, when I am preparing food and I have to throw away plastic, I feel terrible. Like, I actually feel guilty and sick. And why did I buy that? And why couldn't I, I wish I could just eat organic every night, like.
Right. You can't. And
So,
if you're lucky, again, you live in a city, talk about how important cities are, where the city does composting. So I'm so happy that I can compost all my organic material with nothing more than putting it in a bin, and the city takes care of it. Not everybody lives in a place like that. So then it becomes on you as an individual to do your composting. Or imagine if you had to do your own recycling. Well, you couldn't.
yeah.
Right? So all the things that the city can do to help us, really important. And cities are small enough and nimble enough to make changes sometimes that bigger types of government can't. So so I think all levels are important. And please, I'm so glad you feel a sense of relief. And everybody should, and again, we all need to do what we can, recognizing we're all in different places, right? Like,
right.
I can go out and protest pretty safely. because I'm a middle-aged, upper-class white woman. Well, that's not true for everybody. Not everyone can go out with the same level of safety and security to protest. So those of us who can need to, and those who can't, like, absolutely total respect, right?
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I always wondered, I've been to Germany quite a bit because we have family there. And I remember, Marissa, even in like the 80s, they had recycling areas in the neighborhood. So you never saw a garbage truck going from house to house.
Okay.
Everybody went to like a central hub and you dumped your bottles and your plastic and you brought your compost there. And it was sort of like one in each neighborhood where, it was good walking distance for everybody. And that's how they did it. Like, because even the idea of recycling and then having a truck going around the neighborhood with gas fumes, like it's sort of like, it's almost like canceling the thing out,
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such an amazing insight, Monica, because it brings me to something else that I often think about, which is, we don't have to come up with all the solutions ourselves. Like, we can look all around the world and like, oh, well, in Germany, they're doing this piece of it really well, right? Or in China, they're doing this piece of it really well. And so the more we can look to others and work together to solutions, we're all going to get there faster.
Yeah. 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 Oh, that's amazing. I want to start a protest with you now.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Once COVID is over, we'll do it.
Yeah, we could build those recycle hubs.
Oh yeah.
We'll incent people. Maybe we can make pina coladas when you drop off your
I love it.
So, Marissa, what are your hopes for your books? Like what do you hope to achieve with the books that you're writing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, number one, books need to be entertaining and engaging, because if they don't hook you, if you're not interested in it, like the rest doesn't even matter, right? So I'm hoping that I can entertain and engage readers of all ages. And that's one of the things that I like. It's sort of about the young adult category of books, is that anyone from age 12 and up can read it. And I've had people in all age ranges reading Code Blue and liking it. So it's very accessible to everyone, right?
Right.
And then I hope that people come away from it feeling like, yes, I recognize that there is a climate crisis, but I don't feel totally helpless about it. I feel like there are things that can be done to make it better. And so, I try to put some of the solutions in the book already, and to sort of give people insights into other potential solutions. And, I hope that by engaging with the book, people will be curious enough to say, oh, I wonder if this is really true. I should look that up, or, find out.
That's great. So you wrote Code Blue, you wrote in 2018, is that right?
I think let me see. I wrote it from 2016 until 2018. Yeah.
Okay. And it was released in 2018. And now Code Red is going to be coming out next week, correct?
No. Okay. So this is a complicated story.
Yeah, please.
So Code Blue came out initially in 2018 with a Canadian publisher who was very environmentally friendly, and it was like totally the right match. And it was on the market for about a year, and then that publisher was having other unrelated issues and had to shut down. In the meantime, I was writing Code Red, and so this publisher said, well, there's this other publisher, I can't guarantee they take you, but why don't you send them your stuff, because they're also very interested in environmental issues. And so I sent them both Code Blue and Code Red in 2019, and they loved it, and we signed a contract. And then Code Blue was supposed to be re-released in 2020. But this is the short version. The new publisher is out of Australia, and at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, I don't know if you remember, there was terrible wildfires in Australia.
Yes.
Yeah. So my publisher lost their home and their office, both in the wild.
No.
Yeah.
Oh my
Right.
God.
So climate change, like, yeah.
Yeah.
So they said, we're happy to release you from the contract. I'm like, no way. If you're planning on rebuild, I'm going to stick with you. So they did take a year to rebuild. And now Code Blue is coming out May 24th. So in 6 days.
Okay.
And Code Red is coming out in July.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so tell me about Code Red. Is it a sequel to Code Blue or?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, it is. Nice.
Yeah. The same characters, new adventures.
Oh, that's so great. And then you're also working on another book, which is a true story.
Yeah.
About your uncle.
Yeah. So I've actually switched in the last year from writing books to writing screenplays. Learning how, anyways.
God, this is amazing.
I love to read, but I do recognize that more and more stories are told, and the way people access stories is through video, right? Whether it's Netflix or regular TV or whatever streaming service, Prime, that's how to get your story out to many more people is to do it as a screenplay. So I'm learning how to write screenplays, and I've written a screenplay based on my uncle's life, my great uncle's life, which he was just this incredible, like, do you know the movie Forrest Gump?
Yeah.
Like, his life was like that. Like, if you take every major historical event, he was there somehow, and just
wow.
Amazing, and his untold story. So I'm happy with that. And now that I've sort of got my feet wet, I've written 2 screenplays, that one, another one. I'm ready to start thinking about, well, how will I write a screenplay that combines my climate crisis activism passion with the screenplay? So I have some ideas on what I want to do with that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So the story with your uncle too is, how do you know about him? Is it documented somewhere or?
Okay, so my dad passed in 2016. My dad was a bit of a hoarder. My mom tried to keep it in check and throw things out when he wasn't looking, but after he passed, she was going through his things, and in his little home office, in a jam-packed closet at the bottom, underneath everything else, she finds this briefcase, old leather briefcase, and she opens it up. About 500 handwritten pages, and the top page says, "The Great American Novel" by Joseph Appel, who was my great uncle. I'm like, who finds that? Who finds the Great American Novel in the closet, right?
Oh my God. I have goosebumps on my goosebumps right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
So I combed through the 500 handwritten pages, and some of it was very personal things that had happened to him, and some of it was him writing fiction. It wasn't like one cohesive novel. It was little bits of everything. And then based on the pieces that I found in there, I had to start to do research, reach out, contact different organizations. The Friends and Family of the Abraham Lincoln Brigade is a tremendous group. So the Abraham Lincoln Brigade were the volunteers who fought in the Spanish Civil War. And they were like the original anti-fascists, went over to fight to try and prevent what they saw coming in World War II. They didn't succeed, but that's why they went voluntarily, because they saw Europe was becoming fascist, and they wanted to try and stop it. So many great sources of information about all the different parts of his life. Incredible.
Oh, that is amazing. So Marissa, I have to share with you, we moved my mom recently from the house I grew up into a condo. This is a couple of years ago. And there was a shoebox in the basement, and on it said Oma's documents. And my husband was helping my mom, and my mom said, "Oh, those are my mother's old receipts, bank statements. You can probably get rid of them." So my husband, he's like, he loves to research and deep dive into, and so he said, well, I'll just go through, make sure there's nothing in there, you might have a card or something. So he goes through it all. He finds letters from my grandfather to my grandmother, like during the war,
Oh
when
my
my grandfather came to Canada to get them out of Germany, and the back and forth with that. So my mom put all of that together, and then my brother is a graphic designer, and he made a beautiful book for the family. And so we have all these stories, and the funniest part, we all laugh. We called it 1,000 Kisses because he'd sign every letter to my grandmother 1,000 kisses.
Oh.
But he also kept reassuring her, like while he was, in the prison of war, that there was enough tobacco that they'd always be able to smoke. Like, don't worry, we're never going to run out of tobacco. It doesn't matter how bad the war gets, there will always be enough tobacco. Isn't that great? And now my mom's working on, she's got like 200 pages of journals that she kept while she and my dad traveled in 1967 through Europe, Africa, the USSR, and she's writing a book. So I'm going to be in touch with you because, yeah, we might need some tips from you on how to put this all together. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, aren't true stories just amazing, right?
They are. Yeah. And the storytelling is so magical. We can learn so much, and even, look at your great uncle, now it's in your blood. I mean, now you know why you have to write.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, nobody else in my family ever wrote anything that I'm aware of. And I was already sort of into the writing process when these documents came to light. And I'm like, oh, yeah, exactly. Right.
I love it. Yeah, it's like a gift that has continued on now. And it's such a great ode to him, Yeah.
Definitely.
I love it. Oh, Marissa, you are so fascinating. Well, this has been great.
Yeah, I'm just having so much fun.
Me too. So I want to invite you to a little Instagram after party, if I may.
Of course.
And we can chat on there. And do you want to let people know how they can get your book?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Right now, it's available direct from my publisher. And so the website is www.stormbirdpress.com. So it's STORMBIRDPRESS.com. As of next week, it will be available on Amazon worldwide. It will be available on Barnes & Noble, wherever they have. I don't know that it's going to be available on Chapters. I have to check with my publisher. And in Hamilton, I always supply my local booksellers, independent booksellers, with some copies to sell. So.
Great. And is it also going to be on Audible? Have you read the book?
Yeah, no.
No?
No.
No. Would you ever do that?
Yeah, I would, but it hasn't happened yet. So.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's your next thing. Okay.
All right.
Marissa, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Monica, for having me. It's been a joy.
Great. All right. So I'm going to just put you back into my virtual green room. Have a glass of champagne.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Okay. Bye. Oh, thank you guys so much for joining. That was amazing. My gosh, that was such a different look on the whole climate change thing in terms of what we can do to make a difference and not feel so anxious about all of the waste that continues to happen. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy Mother Nature. Get out there and get some vitamin D. And while you're at it, go on to Brenda Bedome's website, brendabedome.com. Pick yourself up a nice top in a pretty color to make you feel good for the spring and summer. And I will see you back here next Tuesday on the Get to Know Her show. Keep showing the world your sparkle. Have a great day.